Welcome to another episode of the Drew Aversa Show. I am so excited to have my guest today, Jing Masinda, who worked for the World Poker Tour. The World Poker Tour is one of the high stakes, high roller, high glitz, high glamour poker tournaments in the world, right? Jing, talk to us about your experience today and what it was like working on the World Poker Tour with all these people, multimillionaires, you name it, but most importantly, your passion and your craft of preparing the best event. I think today it's so important. There are so many events that people are missing out on, but a digital revolution that we're in, Jing, can't wait to hear what you have to say for all the people listening today.
Thank you so much, Drew, and thank you so much for that introduction. I'm glad to be here, very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
Yes. I'm very glad to share my experience with your listeners, and I hope that they'll be able to learn a thing or two. I mean, obviously, things have changed from when I started in the event planning industry, but hopefully, our discussion today would be able to impart some knowledge and wisdom to other groups or people who are venturing into event planning or would still like to venture into event planning amidst this difficult time.
Jing, so there are events that range from a birthday party to what you experienced working with multi-millionaires on just, high pressure televised events, things that are seen from all over the world. How did you go from having a dream of being an event planner to working with the best of the best?
Well, that's a good question. It's actually it's a good journey, I would say. I was in foreign service. After I graduated from college, I was in the foreign service industry. I used to work for the Embassy of Canada. And there was, it never occurred to me that I will be in events, right? So I was working for the embassy in Manila for 9 years. But then, I've always been, during that time, I've always been asked by friends to help them plan, their events. And so I will just help them out. And then it came to a point where it's becoming more and more okay, well, this is taking so much of my time already and I'm not getting paid, although they're my friends and family, but, I'm allocating time for them. So, why not make money out of it? So that's when I started my events planning company back in the Philippines. And until, in the second year of, being in operation, it used to be just a part-time thing, I would do it on the weekends, but then my clientele grew and, pretty much I'm getting referrals and, that's how basically I decided, well, you know what, I wanted to do more events planning. So I focused on that, resigned from the embassy, and then it happened that one of my colleagues from the embassy recommended me to Asian Logic, which pretty much brought the Asian Poker Tour in the Philippines. It's one of the premier poker tournaments in Asia at that time. This was 2008. I guess I'm probably aging myself here, but so this was in 2008. And then, so they got me as their event planner. Basically the idea is, they're my client and I'm their event planner for their inaugural event in Manila. And, the event was successful. It was the first ever poker tournament in the Philippines that's has a $1 million guaranteed prize pool. And being in the Philippines, having a $1 million guaranteed prize pool, that's a huge thing,
That's
right?
huge.
It's huge, it's huge. And so imagine how they got me on board a few weeks before, the scheduled event. And pretty much kind of I have to get everything ready within that, time frame of 3 weeks. But you know how it is when you're into events, you're so used to just working fast, meeting your deadlines, like solving problems and stuff like that. So anyway, make a long story short, the event was very successful, and the owner of the company asked me after the event if I wanted to work full time for them, and I said, well, like that means that I'm gonna have to, because they wanted to do other events in Asia, like Macau. Um, they want to venture out outside of the Philippines. And so I said, well, that means I'm going to have to give up my event planning business. But, at the same time, like I wanted to try something different as well, because I've never been really in gaming.
So you
And
were
this would,
thrust in the big question that so many people are, right?
uh,
Of either being an entrepreneur and then going back to being an employee, or
yes,
being an employee and going, oh my gosh, I'm going to give up stability for being an entrepreneur. So
yes,
this
exactly.
stage, you went from being an entrepreneur to being an employee.
Yes, but at the same time, they gave me the flexibility, and I think that was kind of like a key factor, a key factor that I considered accepting the offer, because like they gave me the flexibility. Hey, you can still work on your events outside of this, because we're only doing a few events per year. So even if I was traveling for the events around Asia, I'd still be able to work on some events. And so like pretty much like, okay, well, well, that's, I can still be an entrepreneur and at the same time become an employee for this company. And they really took care of me. They gave me the experience. It expanded my horizon. And actually that was one of the reasons why I moved to the US as well. I had an opportunity to move here. And then on the next few months, like the World Poker Tour, which is the number one uh, gaming and entertainment company that brought poker on TV, and we have shows on Fox Sports and other like broadcast platforms, had an opportunity, and they're expanding their team for global tour management. So they had an opportunity for an events and marketing manager, and so I applied for that position, and fortunately I got the role. And from there, that began my journey to become a global, pretty much a global events manager for them. Because pretty much like since then, like 2010, we've expanded our footprint not only in the US but across the world. We have events in 7 continents. I've been to most of them, like, in South Africa, pretty much North America was pretty much kind of like a given. Like I'm almost in every state of the US where, gaming is, televised gaming, or, just poker tournaments are allowed. We have, like I've mentioned, we have South Africa, we have, the Caribbean, also like just the last couple of years we've expanded to New Zealand and Australia, which is great. Like probably two of my favorite spots or stops on the tour.
So the
um
hardest question that all
uh-huh.
travelers get asked, what's your favorite country and why?
Ooh, gosh, I don't really want to actually like pick one, but are you saying I should pick one, or can I give you a top three?
Okay, top three.
Top three, okay. I would say New Zealand would be my number one. It's just like like the place is amazing, because not only are you going there for poker, you're also going there for like to like enjoy the scenery, and the people are great. They're so nice, very warm, hospitable. I love the food as well. Second would be, I would say, Montreal in Canada, just because it's a sexy city. It's great during the summer and spring. If you're into the winter type of weather, it's also they also have they also have a great landscape of some sort. And I would say South Africa has been really one of my favorites as well. I guess I don't really have to like explain why, because it's South Africa. You get to go to the safari. Like it's like many other places. You hear like bad things about like places, but like they offer something that like it's just really unique. to them, and it's just amazing.
How has travel shaped your perspective as a manager or as a leader?
Oh gosh, that's like, am I being interviewed here for a job? I'm kidding.
Who knows
Well,
who will hire you
actually, I
after
was
this interview, Jing? I mean, maybe you'll work for the embassy once again. I have to say,
probably.
your statement about Canada, it has sizzle, it has pop, and it's very diplomatic. So the Canadian embassy, they had a great choice hiring you.
Probably. Well, traveling to so many different places has exposed me to the different, to different cultures and the diversity in culture as well. So I learned that, like, the way you deal with people, pretty much, it gave me a better understanding of how people react and behave on certain scenarios based on their culture, and I tend to learn how to react appropriately as well without offending them, and it obviously gave me, like, it widened my pretty much my understanding of you know a person's perspective. So I would say just the diversity and the exposure to different cultures helped me um, deal with with people, because like, when I'm back in the US, I'm just like not dealing with Americans. I'm also dealing with like different cultures, because this is kind of like I would say a melting pot of different cultures as well. Um, but like, it has also um, made me stronger in a way, because obviously, like, when you travel, it's not always that you travel in groups or with pretty much, like, it also, like, you just travel, basically you travel on your own, and then you meet some of your teammates, at the host venue or whatnot. So you're pretty much kind of like have to survive on your own for like during your travel time, right? But I've always made sure that I spend a day or two exploring a city where I'm holding an event, especially if if it's the first time that I've been there. Um, but yeah, I mean, like being in Asia, like, actually, I should have probably mentioned Japan as one of my favorite, countries as well, where we've hosted events. I mean, Japan has always been like, oh my gosh, I've if the food is the food is amazing, like, it's crazy. People are so nice, and yeah, like, just kind of just like going through the hustle and bustle of each city, maneuvering your way, like, getting around, you pretty much kind of like, it develops your problem solving skills, because obviously some cities, like, I don't speak some of their language. I mean, some of them don't really speak English. Just like I have to like kind of like really survive, and that's pretty much like it's kind of like it's a survival for me in a way. So yeah, traveling has been really a big part of molding me as a person, or where am I right now in my life, not only like in terms of leadership, but just pretty much like personally, has really helped me like really grow as a person, and like be able to kind of like really relate to different demographics.
So that's incredible. Big traveler myself, and I really
Mm,
appreciate you sharing the journey, because I do agree that traveling opens up our perspective, gets us out of our bubble, and we get to
mhm.
appreciate so much more of the world as we get to learn about other people, culture, ideology, why we think what we think. Now, let's get to events. That's a people business, right?
Yeah.
People are picky. We see Yelp reviews all the time. This was terrible. This was great. This was phenomenal. The whole spectrum today is clearly visible. So, as an event planner, what is your advice to people trying to plan an event? What are the top 5 things that you need to focus on, have strategy, tactics, whatever you want to share, Gene,
Hmm.
with your experience? What are the top 5 things that go into planning an A-level event, something that can be televised, just maybe it'll never be on television, but worthy of being picked up. Just the creme de la creme of events,
Mm-hmm.
diplomatic event, you name it. You've just been through all sorts of different event planning things through your
Uh-huh.
lifetime. So, what are the top five?
Okay, so I think I've mentioned this to you before. Like events planning is a really competitive industry, right? Every single person thinks that they can plan an event. Sure, yes, you can. But can you plan an event that would actually make an impression on, like everyone who attended the event, or like, or pretty much like kind of like you be able to tell a story from your event? I mean, event planning is very, I would say, it's not for everyone, even though people think that they can plan an event, but it's not for everyone. You need to have a passion for it, because I would say some of it, like, it's a very thankless job, I would say, because, y- you can't please everyone. So pretty much you have to do everything to make sure that everyone has a great experience. But obviously there would be like a smaller, group of people where they're not happy about about something. But it's actually not that bad. But it's just like they're just nitpicking, right? But like but if you are able to kind of tap on that, like niche where you basically give what the people want or what your client want, then like I think like overall, like because something could go wrong, right? Something could go wrong. You should always be prepared for it. Something could go wrong. It could not, no event is ever perfect, but if you can actually make your event appear like it was like smooth flowing, like it was like stress free to the outside world and to the attendees, then you are a successful event manager by doing that. So if you want me to give you like five things or maybe a few things to kind of really like like start, if you want to if you want to get into events planning, I would say you need to have a passion for it, because you should be ready, because there's a difference between, oh, I want to plan an event, and like, oh, I enjoy planning an event. Because like, that the other way is like you're just thinking of it as a job. So events planning and events, usually like it takes long hours. I mean, it's very normal to have 18-hour work days. You're always on your feet. You're dealing with like multiple people, like multiple vendors, making sure like like all the t's and i's are pretty much kind of like settled, like that every single like things are coordinated and are in sync to be able to come up with a smooth flowing event. And if you're not passionate about what you do, you just you feel exhausted after every single event, and you don't see that fulfillment. Like for me, when I was planning a wedding event. Weddings are very personal events, right? Like, and people see that as like, oh my gosh, it's a very memorable event that you can't F it up, you know? And for me, like after months of planning with the bride, the family, bride and groom and their families, of course, like, you probably would be familiar, like the listeners would be familiar how hard it is to plan a wedding. But for me, the fulfillment I get from it is when I see the bride walk down the aisle feeling so beautiful and stress-free and worry-free. It's as if like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to worry about anything else, because I know, my wedding planner or what my wedding coordinator is like pretty much like has sorted it out, is like on top
Until
of
they get the
things.
bill from you, right, Jing?
Well, they already got the bill from me. They just have to like pay the rest of the, the rest of the bill, right? They've already, obviously by that time, they've already like, paid me half of my service fee. But you know what? It's funny you mentioned that, because like as I mentioned, it's a thankless job. It's not really like, I don't really, I don't really charge a lot when I do events. It's just for me, like, I just enjoy, like, making people happy. Like, I want them to, and enjoy the memories, when they're happy about their events, and then like, they refer me to friends or to family, and that's how I build my clientele. And even if I don't charge them a lot, I'm pretty much kind of really like, okay, well, because like I made so many people happy, my clientele is growing, my network is growing, and I'm able to make people happy through the events that I do. So that's pretty much like, I know it's kind of really maybe like not a very good entrepreneurial, like, advice. But here's one thing that I learned about, like, charging your fees or whatnot, is I actually learned this from a photographer, that I worked with. And this was maybe on my second event. And you know how you feel bad about like working, like, oh gosh, I think like I gave so much about, I gave so many, and so many of my hours or so much energy working on this event, and I don't feel like I've earned money. And the photographer actually said, well, that's why, you charge them on how much you think your time is worth. And at that time, like, well, I'm only just starting, and I can't really like give them a portfolio of like events where I've like where I could just say, hey, like, I'm very happy, people are happy about what I did to them before. But ever since, because some people will just like, obviously they'll just like request for like discounts and everything, whatnot. But quite frankly, I've learned how to kind of like work around it, where, what, I'm worth every single penny that you're going to be paying me. And ever since, pretty much like, I felt good about myself, and my clients felt good about the events, because like I don't feel like I'm giving so much energy and time on the event and not getting compensated properly. So they're getting the most, I mean, they're maximizing my pretty much my potential. So
I think
like,
that's so
but
important. So many entrepreneurs talk about that, where they don't feel good asking for money at first, but then the reality is, who's going to pay your bills if you don't ask? And you're not working for a
yeah.
company anymore, so you have to feel good representing yourself, representing your
Mm-hmm.
product, and refining your sales pitch just as you would with another company. So that's one thing I do coaching people, is helping them feel good
Uh-huh.
about their value, right? Because you're
Yeah, pretty
providing
much it's
tremendous
like
value.
knowing,
Who else
yeah,
can who
knowing
else can play in
what
the
your
event?
worth is. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because like, it's the same amount of effort you'd be giving. And quite frankly, like, my friends and family is actually like really like, oh, they're like the number one supporters, pretty much, like, they don't really ask for discounts, because they know, hey, like, more than anyone else, they should be the first people to kind of support my business, right? So they don't really like, they understand like, hey, you need to support your friend or your family member succeed in their craft.
So, Jing, I like having fun in life, and I've been to numerous events, corporate events,
Mm-hmm.
friend events, wedding events, you name it. I've been to a lot of different events. Obviously, I have 10,000 people on my LinkedIn network, so I know a lot of people. I've been to a lot of different things, shook a lot of hands. Long story short, I love having fun. How do you plan a theme? How do you,
Mm-hmm.
how do you plan a theme from a pirate event to a salesforce.com? They have the forest out there, and
Mm-hmm.
all the different cool events that are out there, to
Yeah.
cultural events for embassies. It ranges from really, really elaborate, intricate things. So
Yeah.
how do you plan a theme?
So, okay, so pretty much, like, I was gonna mention it earlier, where, like, one of the key things for you to stay, relevant, in the business of event planning is to have something that sets you apart from other, like, event planning services, because obviously there's, these event planning services have really like, grown, and they're mushrooming from like everywhere. And like you have to think of something that sets you apart from other like event planning services. And personalizing every event and tailor fitting it to your client's needs is a very important factor to consider. And staying relevant as well, because obviously there are certain like themes that are no longer out. So it's so passe already, like it's so used. Maybe you could but sometimes a client wants something that, oh, I want like they want this a particular theme, right? But even if they want a particular theme, you still have to make it a little bit more modern. And pretty much kind of like, I would say it goes with with the current trends. So planning a theme, actually a themed event, is very exciting because it makes it easier to put things together, because you're focusing on one certain theme as opposed to just like, okay, like just just a simple just putting up an event. Okay, so you're kind of like everywhere. But having a theme is actually, it actually helps the event planner kind of like really focus on one thing and making sure that all the other aspects are like in sync. And pretty much like from the color, from like, say if you want if you want, oh, I want like like a Marvel theme party, or like a casino night, or it actually is very, it makes our job easier. So that way, like kind of like, okay, you already have like vendors that are specific for each theme. Sometimes they'd like to have a virtual reality event where like especially like some like like if you're marketing or launching a new product, and you kind of wanted to make you want to make the attendees engage, then you kind of come up with something like an activity or an area would they could try the product, uh like engaging into experience. It's like kind of like an experiential like marketing event. They come up with, or they get out of that event like remembering, oh, that I really love that product. I'm gonna look it up further and then probably like use it for our company, or like use it for their personal for their personal use, because you gave them an experience that they remembered. And even just like just a regular like kind of like event that's themed, like like if you give them something to remember from that event, then like that in a way, like it that's a very successful event already. Like you make it a little bit more like I would say you set your event apart from other like just simple like themed event. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome talk on the theme. And as we wind down our conversation,
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19 has
Oh
shaped the
yes.
world. It has changed everything. Both of us as travelers cut off from our love of traveling, so to speak. Airplanes aren't moving like they used to, and events have totally changed. People aren't getting together in large places. Different cities, counties have ordinances on how many people can be in the room together, what those
Mm-hmm.
people kind of look like, in a sense of family members, and not really big corporate events and whatnot. We're seeing even weddings, people wearing face masks, getting married now. So
Yep.
let's talk about strategy for companies to switch into digital events. How do you retain the feel of a fun in-person event when everybody's looking at Zoom all day long? How do you become different on Zoom? I mean, people are
Mm-hmm.
on Zoom all day, or
Yeah.
Skype, Google, whatever. I mean, it's just the
Mm-hmm.
screen time people are having now is like even more than what they had before.
Yep.
So people are getting worn out, but yet this is how we're going to be connected for quite some time until we figure out the vaccine
Mm-hmm.
and other things. So anyway, long story. So anyway, let's talk about going from traditional events to online events, because this is really something that businesses need to take into account for strategy for
Mm-hmm.
probably at least another 6 months, if not a year.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You got to remember that event planners by nature are very creative people and they're problem solvers. So face them with something that challenges them. um, they would actually think of innovative ways to kind of address the problem, right? And you've seen a lot of changes and innovative ways that these planners have done in this difficult time. And I could actually give like a couple of examples how events planning has really like evolved in this uncertain time, because at first we were thinking, oh, maybe it's just going to be for 2 months and then everything will be back to normal, and that was in March, right? And it's come June, oh my gosh, there's like no, like we don't have any, like kind of like we don't know if this is gonna, if it's gonna go back to normal anytime soon. So event planners have started to really like innovate ways on like hosting events. And for example, like Zoom weddings. I know like not a lot of people are very like, of course, who wants to get married, digitally, or like who wants to get married on Zoom? It's a very like, I would say important, important event in your life. And of course you want to share it with, with your loved ones, being around them. But of course,
I think I know who wants to. Zoom, you can record for free. So
uh-huh.
the person that doesn't want to spend $1,000 on the photographer who gave you the advice on how to charge, that
I would
person
say
does
so.
not want to spend money on Zoom. All right, sorry.
True. Anyway, so the way Zoom weddings have really been done, aside from it being just a regular watch party, where okay, well, you know what, you can like log in at a certain time, and watch us, exchange vows, and of course, the couple would would be there with with their minister or pastor or priest. But it has really evolved from just being a watch party, like having all their friends and family, watch the exchange of vows. Nowadays, like you can actually come up with, like send every guest, like, obviously, like you can probably, this is one of those things where you limit your, the people you share the great experience with, maybe to 10 or 20 guests, where you actually prepare a package. Either it could be like a champagne toast package, or like like a charcuterie, um, where they could, while even if they're home, they can participate. Okay, even you can even have a themed like Zoom wedding, where you can send them a package. It's like, following the concept of, all those like, your Blue Apron or whatever, where they send you the package and they give you kind of like okay, instructions on like how to cook and everything using those ingredients. It's the same concept as this, where they send you a package. Okay, this is going to be for, okay, we're going to be, doing the champagne toasting, we're going to be doing, like a wine and cheese like cocktail hour,
So
just to kind
who,
of
who's
really.
buying? Who's buying? Do you send the discount code to your guests now? Because before you used to have to pay for $100 plate for dinner. So or do you act, or
So
is it
basically
still
there
etiquette
are.
that you have to pay for these online things? What's the
Yeah,
etiquette
of
now?
course. And there are like companies that provide those packages where, and they also ship that over to your guests. So all you needed to do is like find that company, like provide them the information of your guests, and they will ship those, they will ship the package to your guests. And then, of course, you set up a time and date on when you're going to be doing this Zoom wedding and everything. Okay, and sometimes they even like actually ask you, hey, can you dress up, like, and even they can also send a dress as well. So like a lot of these bridal stores or like, boutiques also like has, gone into like digital, where they would ship the dress to the guests as well, and you'd still wear it and whatnot. So being online shouldn't stop you from, like having a more, a magnificent and fun event, right? Also, like there are like, drive-in like concerts. Of course that's not the usual like event, like concert experience that you'd like, but with, with the right execution, following safety guidelines, you can, you can also still enjoy, a concert live, but you'd just be in your car and socially distance from other, from other guests. And I'm not sure if you watched it, but Dave Chappelle just like did pretty much kind of like an event where it was like a stand-up a stand-up event where the guests are pretty much like kind of limited to just two people per area, and they're like socially distanced, and before they go inside the venue their temperature were taken. So there are like extra steps and precautions that are being taken. So pretty much it's like organizing a regular live event, but you are limiting the number of attendees and going through like different safety precautions for that. But for online, you obviously have to kind of really like adjust it. Okay, like if you can't do the live event, if some people are not